Well, hi everybody, welcome back to Spruverse, the scale model universe. I'm Philip Siegel. It's great to have you with me today. And really appreciate all the likes and subscribes and some really great comments. And a couple of you who noticed I was Charger fans been ribbing me about a really bad season we're having. But I love it all and I appreciate it. And I hope everybody's staying safe and well. Here we are with Spindrift. This will be the third episode. Wow. I have to tell you, I first of all have really been working hard to get this into some shape to show you today. I was hoping that we would have at least a coat of the famous orange paint on it, but alas, that was not to be, for a couple of reasons. The first one was that we had a bit of a setback with the base here. Unfortunately, it had to be restored and cracked, so that set me back a week while we were getting that back in shape. The other thing that set me back was the interior, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Wow, talk about biting off more than I thought I could chew. This was the Randy Cooper interior for the 24-inch Spindrift, and I have to say it's a work of art. It's beautifully made. His craftsmanship is excellent. However, I will say that by the time you've sealed the whole thing up, it's really difficult to see an awful lot of it. You know it's inside and you can get glimpses of it through the windows, but it's a lot of money and an awful lot of time and energy for very little results, in my opinion. Personally, would I do it again? Absolutely, because I think it does need an interior, and we've talked about this in the past. A lot of the models that we build beg for interiors and they beg for lighting, but at the end of the day, you are limited to the results you can get. But anyway, we have basically finished the exterior. It's going to be ready for its first coat of paint very soon. I'm going to be taking a few days off because with the Thanksgiving holiday and everything else, I haven't really had a chance. We haven't had a chance to get up to our home in Oregon, and we're going to do that. So I'm pretty excited about that. So, but here we are on the bench, and I'm really pleased with where we are. So for the exterior, basically it was a lot of priming and a lot of prepping, with specifically the nose cone here, and you'll see this yeah, you can see this on my overhead camera. Don't be put off by a lot of this, because there's an applique that goes on here that's a grid actually, so that will cover an awful lot of it. I did notice that my window was not curved correctly, and I didn't have enough of the window exposed in order to see the cockpit. The bottom of the window actually is fine, although I'm going to do a little bit more puttying once it's in. But for the most part, this is looking pretty good. Now I am going to obviously put a window in it, and I'm going to be using the K&S clear plastic sheeting. This is a 0.015 thickness, and it's got a nice clarity to it, and we'll polish that up as we always do with our Novus, which is this. You've seen me talk about this before, but that's how we'll get that polished up. But it does certainly beg for a window, so I'm going to put them in. I think it's so interesting that, you know, in the world of Star Wars, the filming miniatures didn't have glass in them because they didn't want reflections. But in the rest of the world, everything gets glass. I don't know how that works, but hey, it's all fine. So the dome itself I'm going to be putting an orange clear on that. That's the Tamiya orange clear, the X26. And that will create a nice orange glow for the for the globe, for the dome. And the dome itself will get a grid, and it will be lit up with an orange strip light, and it's not going to pulse or anything, it's just going to be on. Our intake engines, I've showed you a little bit of that test, but for those of you who didn't get a chance to see it, this is what that looks like. So that's the intake engines, and they look really nice. And I've used a milky plastic for a diffuser. I've created a little frame in the back here, and the way this basically works is this will be glued to the back. Then once this is glued to the back, these diffusers just drop in, really. They drop in the front, and then the grid goes on top of that. And that works really well. And that's going to get a fast flickering effect from Randy Newbert's Voodoo Effects board, which I'm very happy with. So I've got the rear engine sort of covered. I also decided I was going to put a light in the door panel. And you can see that, I'll actually show you that on PhilCam, because it's probably more fun to do it that way. So let me get PhilCam here. There, I've put in a little nano light for the door, and you can see that that's lit up right now, and that looks really good. And so what we'll do is we'll cover that. I've got a very small little decal that will cover that to make that look finished. I'm also pre-painting the door before I put it on its slider. The reason for that is I kind of wrestled with the idea that I would just glue the door, which slides open, and then paint it. But I was really worried about paint running and overspray and sticking and that sort of nonsense. So I thought it best to kind of give the door a couple of coats of paint, and then we'll attach it, and then we don't have to be so rough with it once it's in place. The other challenge that I have, and I'll show you that in just a minute, is this exterior, the shell, it all has to be sealed up before I can paint. I realized, and here she is, this interior is going to have to be installed, and it's going to have to be anchored down, and then I'm going to have to seal it up, but it has to be rock solid so that when I turn it over to paint the underneath, the whole thing doesn't crash and burn on me. I'm going to do that with some 30-minute epoxy resin once it's locked in and I know it works. But I'm really happy with the interior. I'm going to quickly fire it up for you right now. We'll take a little sneak peek around it so you can see what it looks like. Unfortunately, it's not very dramatic because you get a better vision of it with the human eye, but I'll try to show you what I've got. What I've done is I've fired this up for you, and I've put it in the base. I'll show you what this looks like on PhilCam, because it's a lot of fun. So you can see we've got the looking through the cockpit to the passenger area. We've got that classic glow, and all the lights are on in the cockpit, including these side lights here, which have a nice soft glow to them. Unfortunately, you know, you're very limited to what you can see on the camera, but it's a lot of fun, and everything is lit. Everything is as it should be. And I'll just sort of give you an overview here of the wiring. I try to clean it up as much as I can. I try to be as neat as I could. And anyway, it's all looking pretty good. So that's basically the interior. Now, let me kill it for just a second here. Get those out of the way. Now, so this interior is, what I've done is I've made it a separate piece, and I'll gingerly take it out here. You can see it's a separate piece, and it drops into the base. And then the challenge is going to be getting the whole thing sealed up. I'm thinking what I'm going to have to do is drop it all in once it's all anchored, sort of like this edge. Then I'm going to have to line up the windows on both sides. They're not lined up at the moment, and they have to be. So I'm going to be really fighting with this thing. It looks like I've kind of done a couple of test fits, and I've realized that you kind of got to push it and pull it. And I'm going to also be putting a couple of blocks of wood against it to kind of push it all in and squeeze it up. And I'll use a 30-minute epoxy so that I have some time to play with this. But I have to tell you, it's been quite a bit of a challenge. And I think one of the things that I didn't really think about was, once this interior was completed, how was I going to drop it into the base, the ship itself? Now, it does all come together quite nicely, but it is going to require a lot of puttying and a lot of cleanup on the outside. I'm going to have to then tape all these windows up and the intake valves and the vents, and then give it a few coats of paint, let it dry, get a couple of coats of varnish on it so I know that it's really solid. But even then, I'm going to have to be really careful with this so it doesn't chip and scratch. You get a chip or a scratch in the wrong place, and it's going to be a well to hurt, because it'll be really difficult to hide it. But I take it slowly. I think if I take it slowly and give it a nice few coats of paint, several things will happen. It will hide a lot of the light scratches that are still left in it, even though I've given this 3 or 4 coats of the filler, and I've been sanding it all the way down to 2500 grit. So I think it's going to turn out really well, but there are going to be some challenges ahead. So I'm going to have to be really careful about how much of this I actually end up puttying. I'll obviously put tape on both sides and only putty the area that I'm using, but then that has to be sanded. And of course, once you start sanding, you've got all kinds of problems, like dust getting into this thing. So it's going to have to be really well sealed up before I really put the final coats of paint on it, and hope that I don't get a whole bunch of dust inside of it. So I'm going to have to be really careful. Now, the other thing I wanted to tell you was, I just got myself a bandsaw. Here's what that looks like. So this is my bandsaw from Microlux Tools, Micromark. It is what I used to cut out my new tail fin for the Spindrift that I've just been showing you. Now, I just got this, and I have to say it is an absolute lifesaver and a game changer for me in terms of upping my game. And I do highly recommend this. It's about just under $400 from Micromark, and it will cut metal and plastic, and it is incredibly accurate, very easy to use. It comes with a vacuum plug, so you can plug in your vacuum cleaner for a far less dust experience. And I've just been having an absolute blast using this. So it's something I highly recommend. So now on my bench, I actually have my bandsaw, and I also have my sander, my belt sander, which if you're playing with resin or wood, is equally as valuable. So those are my 2 new tools on the bench. So this is what the bandsaw looks like, and I have to tell you guys, it's a lifesaver. I'm just so happy that I invested in one. They're not terribly expensive, but my God, they're amazing. And there's so much you can do with it. You can cut metal and plastic. Mine comes from Micromark, as I said, and I just had a lot of fun with it. Now, what came with the kit was this piece, and you can see that it was a very nice piece. It came in 3 sections that I had to glue together. And when I started gluing it together, I got it as flat as possible, but I realized it's got the same problem with the way it was built, right? So the 3D printer just laid it down in lines, and it's got a mesh look to it that isn't very smooth. It's also, they were kind enough to do this in the print, but I don't need it, is they put this groove in here, which is where I suppose you're supposed to drop in that paint, that gray line that is dropped in there. But I'm going to actually use some pinstriping, some automotive pinstriping in the gray. It'll be nice and sharp, and it will really lay down nicely on that paint, and I think that will give it a nice finish. But I decided that I wasn't going to use this piece for a couple of reasons. One is, it's actually too thick for the kit, so I would have to thin it down somehow, and that's not going to happen, because every time you take a sander to this stuff, you just start pulling at the fibers, and it doesn't smooth very well. So what I did was, I went out and I got some 0.125 3mm plastic from Evergreen. This stuff is awesome. It's the perfect thickness for this model, and I simply traced out my new one, and I went to the bandsaw and I cut it out, and now I have a solid, complete piece. Now I've tested it on the model, and it absolutely fits like a glove, and because it drops into the existing seam, it really looks finished. So I'm really happy with that. That was a great result. And if you don't have a bench sander and you don't have a bandsaw, if you are getting into these kinds of things, treat yourself one day. They're really worth it, and they're a lot of fun, and they'll save you an awful lot of headaches. So the next thing I'm going to be doing with this kit is I'm going to be working on the teardrops. Now, these are the teardrops. What I haven't figured out yet is just exactly how I'm going to attach these to the kit, which I'm going to have to do before obviously I seal it up. And then I'm going to have to put some diffuser on there. So I think my strategy is going to take some 2mm plastic card, and I'm going to create a couple of tabs for this, and I'll glue this basically to the inside of this piece. Now, because this is just one piece, it should sit nicely, and then that will allow me to drop the diffusion plastic and the grid through the front, and then I can glue that on, and that should do really well. And then of course I'll connect that to its proper place on the board, and then the only other thing I'm going to have to do then is connect the rear engine pieces permanently to this. Then I'm going to have to leave that dangling and then be able to push it in. This does connect from the back. I've tested it. I pre-tested it, and it does slide in nicely. But I am going to have these already in place, so that when I pop this on, they're ready to go. And I'm struggling with what to do, but I am considering putting in a little plug so that this just connects to the plug, and then I push it in, seal it up, and I'm off to the races. I'm nervous because in the past I've not had a lot of success with the plugs. No matter how many times I actually solder them together, I get a short. And I'm not sure, I think the pins get loose or they just don't make a perfect connection. So you got to get lucky with the ones you buy. I bought a set of like a 500 from China, and some of them are good and some of them are not. They failed on my Titanic model, so I've got a little bit of re-engineering to do there to actually get the lights back on that. But this will come together in a world of glory, and the next time you will see this bad boy, it will be painted and ready to go. I'm really happy with it. I've chosen just a small wooden base. It's going to have a brass rod that will drop the power line into it. It will sit, it'll sit about 3 inches off the base. And then I'm going to paint the base in a gloss black. And I've got a really fun, I think I showed you, I've got a really fun applique for the base itself. It's actually the patch from the uniform. You can see it here. That's a lot of fun. And I might get a Land of the Giants sign made for this. My local frame shop also deals in acrylic and can cut anything I want, so I might go and do that, and I think that will really make this look finished. Quickly, I'll just put the back on here so you can see that, and then I will just for giggles just carefully drop this in like this, just so that you can see it all together. I mean, the nice thing about the fin is it kind of acts as a key and locks everything together. So there it is. That looks like fun. I'll show you what this looks like on field cam because it's a little big for my cameras here. I'm really excited about this. It's a lot of fun, and it's come together really well. Now, I would say at the end of the day, this kit with the interior and all your supplies is probably going to run you about $850, $900. It is not cheap. So if you're going to tackle something like this, you've really got to have some skills that have been honed. I'm probably just on the border of dangerous working on something like this, but I've had a lot of fun with it, and I think at the end of the day it's going to turn out to be a really nice addition to my collection, and I'm so glad to have it. So there it is. This is the Spindrift. Dangerously close. It looks like a pile of garbage at the moment, but I promise you it's really coming together, and I've put an awful lot of time and effort into this, and it's well worth it. So I hope that this build has been fun for you guys. We're going to be moving on to some other things. I'm going to start the Spitfire from D'Agostini when I come back from my break, which is going to be about 10 days. And we're also going to be diving into the Phone Home, ET Phone Home kit. Now I do have a preview of one of the kits that I purchased that I wanted to show you, and so I shot a video of that I'll probably publish. But because this is the scale model universe, and I've always said we're a little bit of a test kitchen here, I decided to purchase the competing version of it. So there's a Golden Armor version, and then there's a Yay Monsters version, and I decided to get both kits so that we could put them side by side, and then I'm going to figure out which one I'm actually going to build. So that's coming up on the bench. Obviously, I'm still working on my X-Wing. I'm on pack 23, so I think I've got 2 more packs to go, and then that should be finished and ready to show you. wow, does that have some problems, as we've talked about. Sadly, I'm afraid D'Agostini fell down on that one. But, you know, you win some and you lose some. So that's it for this episode. Thanks for being a part of the Sprueverse universe. Thank you for subscribing. If you like what you see, please let me know. I really also enjoy your comments. Stay safe, be well, build something, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.